Hi, welcome to Beyond the Bell. My name's Alan Downs, my co-host, Mark Figueroa. Today we're going to be touching on the great event. You got your first look at some of our older fighters this past weekend. We had a 2-day event here in Irving, hosted by Irving Police Athletic League. We had the Masters tournament and first one, and turned out great. We had a great turnout. Kind of celebrating our older boxers. Some have experience, some never boxed before. They decided later in their years that they wanted to get into this. Really great. I wanted to compete this time, but unfortunately, my some things didn't allow me to. So hopefully next one. But I got ringside. I got to be the chief of officials, which I already am. But we had a great time this weekend, great turnout. But I'm more excited to hear your first time because, Mark, I got you more exposed. You know, we've always been in the MMA and looking at this. And you never, I've always had the pleasure of having both sides of the ring of MMA, my history and also with boxing. What's your thoughts to seeing some of these old boxers?
It was insane. It was so cool to see. The kind of the running theme or joke was these guys were getting up off the couch. They weren't getting up off the couch. They were getting ready for the fight. We had guys from Oklahoma, Louisiana, Illinois, and to see them come out with just the heart that they had. And they were anywhere from 35 on up to 50 something years old. And it was cool. I've always been in MMA 20 years, watched a couple of boxing fights, pros. The amateurs seemed to be more exciting. And it was only like minute and a half or 2-minute bouts, but it was exciting. So on the Facebook page and we'll be posting more on YouTube, I've got some clips and some fights that I've recorded. I didn't record every single minute, every single second, just because some of the more action-packed moments. But it was insane. It was great. It was just, I thought it was going to be a lot of guys that used to box that just kind of came back out and wanted to box again. I didn't realize, obviously, that's actually, they can't do that if they've had a professional fight. They can't come back as an amateur or anything. But guys, it was their first fight. Some of it was their first fight on Saturday and their second fight on Sunday. One gentleman that we'll touch on, he won a belt. So we have a picture of them up on the Facebook page. It was really cool. It was really cool to be able to see. They were excited. The crowd was excited. I was excited. It was a lot of action. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, you'll find some of the ones that they might have went through their life never getting that experience, but they always wanted to. And what they do is they get off the couch. Like, I want to give this a try.
Yeah.
They might not have boxed before. You do have to go through physicals. When you're at that age, you got to get an EKG. They got to make sure the doctor's going to clear them. So I don't want the audience thinking that we're just, hey, if you're 35 years or older, come box. We're not doing a tough man contest. Yeah. It's sanctioned by USA Boxing here at Irving Police Athletic League, located in Irving, headed up by Coach Rosario Solis that we've had on here already. Did a great job putting this together.
Yeah.
I've been hearing a lot of compliments. We had several boxers that went to Las Vegas and fought, and they said this was one of the best venues they've ever seen. They felt like they were coming out because we did it like they'd be fighting pro.
Yeah.
We didn't only just host the tournament, we celebrated these men. It is open to ladies also. We didn't have any ladies this time compete, but celebrating and giving them to get in that ring, to get off that couch and train to get in there and do it.
Yeah.
And, what was admiring, whether they they won or they lost, they still competed. And everybody that I got to talk to, I was ringside and running everything, so you got to talk to them more firsthand. But you've seen the passion that they have.
Yeah.
And they want to do it again.
Yeah.
So the ones that first fight, I had the pleasure, they come up, talk to me afterwards, and a lot of feedback that I got.
Yeah.
And some of them were nervous. I think one of my favorite, I'm just getting to know the gentleman, one of the bigger events, He was a former Navy SEAL, and he's been through combat and everything. He was nervous.
Yeah.
Why are you nervous? And I'm going to ask him to come on the show.
Oh, nice.
And he said he would. He lives up in Illinois. Nicest guy you could ever meet. Very, big guy. And he
Yes,
just said that, he don't know why. Just, I guess when he, was getting ready to get in the ring, because we're all like, you've been in combat, you're a Navy SEAL, you're the tough of the tough. And, my commend just for him to, serve our country as proud as he has had, and then say, hey, I want to do this. And he even at 51 years old, it already said to us, he goes, I wouldn't mind doing a pro shot.
That's awesome.
Now we got to go through, that's a whole different avenue. It's easy with USA Boxing because we have a division for that. But hey,
Yeah.
George Foreman did it.
Yeah,
Came back at 50.
50, yeah.
He was 50 when he came back and he won the title. They always say the power's the last thing to go.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that stuck out at you?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the heart and really just kind of ties into Men's Mental Health Month, honestly. I spoke with, first I want to backtrack. I want to thank Tony at the Southern Junction.
Junction, Texas.
That was, I mean, they put on a production. They got a music, like a DJ basically doing the music, the lighting, everything. I mean, the atmosphere is great. And, June is Men's Mental Health Month. So I spoke with somebody afterwards, and this was his first fight. He actually won. They had belts and everything. And it was a few years ago. He said he was going through some things, and he was speaking with his doctor. And she said, you need to go do something, go exercise. And one of his buddies talked him into going into boxing. And he thought, man, I don't want to get my brain beat up. That's supposed to make me worse. And it actually helped him. He literally was like, this saved me. It brought him out of a dark place. And he was so excited, even after he just glowing. And he stuck around for the whole event. And he was just so happy that he was able to do it. And it helped him get out of a bad place. And like I said, it's Men's Mental Health Month. So, and one of our sponsors is United Family Association. And we can speak more on the United Family Association. It's an association that provides health benefits, one of those being a mental health hotline where a member can call and at the text at any time.
So they have the Mental Health Awareness Fund. So United Family Association is one of the sponsors. They have other benefits on there. Well, one of the things that they celebrated that was actually added because of some members that came that had lost family members that had PTSD, military members. Over the past few years, it's been harder for our veterans to get in to see anybody, and suicide rate was up. So they work with some, they're real licensed counselors, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, no copays. So a shout out to United Family Association to implement that for their members.
Yeah, I mean that's huge. I mean, I think the tournament kind of showcased a couple of things to me. It really made me thinking really deeply about it, but it's just part of life where you had dads. There was a guy that his wife and his daughter was in the audience. One of the other fighters, his dad was in the audience, and he was a former firefighter, Dallas firefighter. So it's dads, again, it is open to women, but it kind of showed, I think the dads were showing kids, and it showed other people that, hey, you can set goals, even in your 40s and 50s, and you can accomplish those goals. I hope that it resonated with the kids or their children. And really, I think it shows that, as dads, how much of an example, they can be to their kids, even at older ages, right? Not that I'm there yet, but as your kids get older, I think people kind of, maybe they let their kids kind of go off, but you can still be an example to them. And the gentleman actually with the dad that was a firefighter, he said he was the hardest working man he's ever met in his entire life, and he was like his best friend.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like, that was awesome. You know, I lost my father, and I have a child, and there's times where I'm like, man, I wish he could see her take her first steps or talk. So it was it's pretty powerful.
It really is. You know, when you're sitting there being a father myself, you know, when you're listening to kids in the background, you know, and I know I've been up in the ring and the pro sides, and, you know, Mimo, the youngest, you know, he'll eventually be on this podcast. You know, he loves to talk. And to hear when they yell out to you, you know, that's my dad, or, you
Yeah.
know, I love you, dad. You were hearing that from the audience this
Yeah,
past weekend.
yeah, little girl.
You know, I love that little girl yelled out, I love you, dad.
Yeah.
And, you know, unfortunately, the father, you know, he wasn't able to win the match, but he did good. He didn't,
Yeah.
he did nothing to be
Nobody
embarrassed
quit.
about. Nobody quit.
Nobody quit. They all kept going.
Everything went going. We didn't have any knockouts or, you know, everybody, and it was great sportsmanship.
Yeah.
And, you know, not to get away, you know, I know we always are talking about the boxing or, you know, MMA, and I know you want to touch a little bit on, I believe, Miss
Yeah.
Harrison
Yeah.
winning the title with the UFC this weekend. And, you know, I do want to touch a little bit on how we are role models as fathers, and you're just getting to know that. I mean, I've been one for a lot of years. You know, setting the bar and role models in everything is probably more, you know, I'm born in the 60s. It's probably more valuable now because we lost the old school ways. We lost a lot. And what these athletes are showing kids and us, you know, whether we're an athlete currently now or ever was before, is setting that bar.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, you know, was there anything more you wanted
Yes.
to add? I mean, you got to talk to a lot of the boxers afterwards. As you see, I'm locked ringside, so I can't.
Yeah.
Get up.
Yeah, I mean it was just the feedback from everybody was great. Did we go into UFC 316? Want to talk about that or
If you want to touch on it, Bennett, I was unfortunately didn't get to watch. I did see
Yeah.
that I got the pleasure of meeting her, but you
Yeah,
go,
you
you go
got to
ahead and
meet, so-
segue.
Yeah, so UFC 316 Saturday. It was a big event. Kayla Harrison, former, well, not former, always a two-time judo gold medalist for the U.S., fought Juliana Pena, and she won using judo. It was a submission, I believe it was. And, I mean, it was just she just annihilated her. But Juliana Pena's a warrior. It was a great fight. It kind of... well, that was the co-main event. Main event was Merab Dvalishvili versus Sean O'Malley for the rematch for the title, and Merab manhandled Sean as well. Kind of again a deeper level on that too. It was Sean O'Malley is kind of known for some wild stuff.
Yeah, he's different.
But you know, he said I stopped. He stopped doing drugs, weed, whatever. He stopped being on the internet, social media, did a social media cleanse, and I thought that was a pretty good. You know, again, setting an example. He didn't win, but he was like, man, I'm gonna. He stepped up his game in life and maturity, which was awesome. But one story I shared with you and share is Kayla Harrison, again, being an example, whether or not it's as a father, but as a parent. She shared a story where she adopted her nephew and niece from her sister. Her sister unfortunately struggles with drug addiction, and she's adopted them. Her mom was actually taking care of them, but there was some sickness and things. So she's a full-time mother of two children and now a UFC champion, two-time Olympic gold medalist, and she's going to fight Amanda Nunez. Looks like she's coming back, which you got to meet both of them.
I've been
So-
I've been in the training room with them while they were getting ready to fight.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, size comparison. Kayla Harrison versus Amanda Nunez. Kayla Harrison always competed at 155. The UFC doesn't have that weight class. The PFL did pretty much just for her. 145 was created for Cyborg. Then she left. Amanda Nunez beat Cyborg at 145, but she also held the 135 title. So Kayla Harrison made weight for the first time at 135. She looked terrible, but she made it. Ballooned right back up and had the weight advantage. So we don't know if it's going to be for the 145 or the 135, but you saw them both hydrated, both at their pretty much at their prime. What was the
I mean, I got to see them both behind the scenes. You know, I was, you know, Kayla Harrison was with PFL at that point. You know, it was here in Texas, and I had to, you know, I was one of the inspectors, so I was in the room while she was training. Nicest lady. They both are nice ladies.
they're both widely known as some of the nicest out there.
They, you know, just what you see in the ring, you know, it just, you know, it changes. You know, they're focused. They were both having intense focus when they're getting ready. You know, when they're getting wrapped up and they're, you know, warming up in their dressing room. You know, I got to see what most don't get to see. You know, I'm right there and watching, interacting. You know, they're both very talkative, very polite. You know, when I'm watching over there when they're getting their hands wrapped. It's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be a fight to watch. I really do.
Yeah.
You know, they both have the demeanor behind, but when they go in that ring, they bring it all.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be. I don't want to predict anything, and I'm not going to give odds on who do I think will. I just think it's going to be a fight to watch. You know, when I look at how women in all combative sports have gone, you know, boxing a little bit, but when you see how the women have, you know, achieved headliners,
Yeah.
you know, they're not undercards, they're headliners.
Yeah.
And it's going to be exciting for me to watch. I really am looking forward to them too. I was surprised to see it. I did get to see the interview a little bit with Amanda the other day, you know, and when I got to see Harrison won the title over there, because, you know, it's been a couple years since I've seen her. I think, you know, to make a little joke, I remember right after she won at the PFL, this is probably 2 years ago. And, you know, I had the contract and she signed it and I gave her the check. And it was a nice check. And she looked at me, she goes, I thought this automatic deposit.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, no, it's.
Imagine trying to cash that check.
Yeah, I won't disclose. I'll tell you off the air what it was, but it, you know, it just showed, you know, sense of humor
Yeah.
and how down to earth she is, you know. And they do say, you know, we're seeing it all the time now with, you know, the way the ladies got to battle in all sports. You know, I know we focus on the combative sports, but all sports now with what they got to achieve, and now they even got to face sometimes where, you know, am I going to end up in with a man? You know, as much as I respect Kayla Harrison, I respect Amanda. You know, they're definitely not going to want to get in with some of our top fighters in the MMA.
Yeah.
You know, and I hope to God that never happens, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I wish I could. I'm a little embarrassed. How did it go? I just see the highlights of the fight.
That's all you needed to see. That was what it was. It was, I mean, it was just it just goes to show, like, she's an expert in judo,
Mhm.
and she did what she's an expert in. You know, Juliana Pena started off Juliana Pena has a great story, right? She was overweight, slightly. Her sister was doing cardio kickboxing. She drug her along. She liked it. She was losing weight, got in and got some fights. She had some troubles in her personal life. She was on The Ultimate Fighter, which it seemed like it was so long ago. She did super well with that. She was there with Raquel Pennington. She was on, I think, Ronda Rousey's team or Misha Tate's team. She was on Misha Tate's team. It was Misha Tate versus Ronda Rousey. Huge rivalry. And then huge rivalry there. And she had a couple setbacks in her career. She had a child by C-section, had some medical complications, overcame that. Got the belt from Amanda, had a rematch, lost the belt, beat Raquel Pennington for the interim title. Like, I mean, it was a lot. So, you know, she's one that, I mean, she's a fighter, you know, in all sense of the word. But, you know, I think the discipline in both the sense of the mindset as well as Kayla Harrison being disciplined in judo, 2-time gold medalist. She just stuck to her game plan and did really well. I mean, that's it. Same thing with Marab. And it was just a master class in judo. So I can't say anything else. I mean, I'm not a judo master, but it was just the trips and the I don't know the Japanese names for them. They have to memorize the Japanese names to get their belts. And you know, their sweeps and all of that other stuff. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, I didn't do, I cross training years ago and I started learning Shotokan.
Okay.
Or no, I'm sorry, forgive me. I did do work a little in the Shotokan Ishinran.
Okay.
And
Bless you.
my instructor was requiring us I did not do well with it. You know, I tried it, didn't work well. When he said it, you know, he was German teaching me Japanese.
That's yeah. Hey, well, John Donaher, jiu-jitsu guru, judo guru, fighting guru, guy eats, sleeps, and breathes combat sports. When you watch one of his videos, every Japanese name of the throws and everything, he knows everything. Like but he's English, so yeah, it's I don't know him, but it was just really cool to see that. Like, you know, it's that's what I love about the MMA. You know, you could have a boxer go up against the judo fighter, or a boxer versus a boxer, boxer versus kickboxer, and you know they all start standing. You all got to start standing up. So it was a great fight, good exciting. So I don't know if I can cover it, but we have a local MMA event coming up at the end of the month too, and then we still have the July 25th amateur Texas Elite
Friday night fight. The next day will be the pro fights. It'll be the elite tournament Friday night. That's where we're working with boxers to get them ready for the pros. They already did a lot of them already won the Golden Gloves. They have achieved all they can achieve. Now they're looking to education. You know, even the coaches we have to sometimes work with, and a lot of great coaches out there, but a lot of people don't understand the business side of getting ready for the pros. You know, similar to acting, everybody wants to be one, but you know, the chances of making it's one, the right connection to business. And, you know, I think eventually we'll do a segment on, you know, that educational part. We'll probably invite one of the pro promoters over to Hector Vasquez is probably going to be the one we're going to sit down with here soon and discuss with that what they're looking for. And that's what we're doing in our local LBC, where it's all elites. It'll probably be about 15 bouts. Well, once again, at Southern Junction here in Irving. Going to be a great event. I welcome everybody to come out. You'll love the show. You know, everybody has asked me, you know, when it comes to amateur boxing to the pro side, sometimes it gets more intense. I mean, you know, you look at the Dallas Golden Gloves that we host and the Texas State and Fort Worth and all the Golden Gloves. When these young men and women get in there, they're hungry. They want it.
Those kids were going at it.
And they will everything to do that. And if you notice when that 10-second bell hits, it's all out.
Yeah.
It's all out. Everything you got, even with some of the masters you've seen at them last Texas, they're out of gas.
I was getting tired watching them.
They're out of gas. A lot of them were out of gas. They laughed about it. You heard the ring announcer, Roland Gomez, was making comments. There's no gas station up there. And they had it. If you remember the two gentlemen that went at it at the end, they were completely relying on each other. It looked like in the old Rocky
that was crazy.
Rocky 1 where they were just.
But they didn't quit.
And they didn't quit. And that's the thing is they came out there, they didn't quit.
Yeah.
And that's the stuff that, you know, you'll see is, you know, you're watching a lot of these young men and women when they really want it. And when you talk to them, some of them not looking to go pro, but they're using this as a stepping stone.
Yeah, one of them I think was he was 3-0 from Oklahoma. Shout out to a fellow New Yorican. He did a good job. That was an exciting fight. And kind of it's Father's Day's coming up. We're talking about not quitting. I think it's a good transition into we're talking about some mental health and things like that, and you just kind of triggered that in my mind. I think not quitting is relative to the sports world. So any of you fighters, boxers, anybody watching this, not quitting. And given that last, actually I was talking with someone, and there was it was basically like a statistic, like your body can go do 40% more when you think that you're empty. I don't remember who I was speaking with, but I think it was that. Yeah, it was actually the gentleman that had the mental health thing, and so he was saying 40% more, 40% more. They push and push and push, and we know this is sometimes success comes for people. It would have came right after they quit. Like some people quit right before they hit the. Somebody told you this. You told me this, right? So so not quitting, right? Not quitting, and again, to go into Men's Mental Health Month, Father's Day, I think we're seeing a lot more dads being involved in kids' lives, which is great. Being involved in the sports, being involved in everyday life for kids, and just talking about that is not quitting. Not quitting as a father, not quitting as just a person, not quitting as a husband, not quitting as a human. And Father's Day one time a year. Men's Mental Health Month. Thank God we got that, and that's June. But guys, don't quit. Again, touching on United Association, United Family. There's a mental health line. There's people to talk to. Have a good support system in your life. People that you can rely on. Luckily, I had you to rely on for a lot of things. We've talked sometimes, and without a good positive influence in my life, my dad was great. I learned a lot of work ethic from you, learned some things from him, but it was whatever that was, some semblance of a support system. It was there. It was on one wheel sometimes, but it was there. As guys, I think a lot of the times we're afraid to talk about emotions, feelings, what we're going through. We bottle it up. It's not healthy. Take advantage of the United Family Association. Take advantage of, talk to friends, talk to people, talk to us. Just keep that in mind. Don't quit. Keep going. Something is always, if you keep trying to, my kind of motto that I've kind of developed is you might have made bad mistakes and had taken steps back, but when you just kind of let everything set aside and think about life, if you make as many good decisions as you possibly can moving forward, you dig yourself out.
Oh yeah.
That's just something that I kind of came up with because I've been there, and you're like in a sinkhole with the shovel and it just keeps coming in on you. But for me, if I kept making better decisions and good decisions, I learned, I got better, I grew, I was able to learn what that last 10 seconds in the third round could be like, not in a ring, but to me that's the same kind of. I think that's why I resonate with some of this. But what are some of your feelings on that?
With Father's Day is coming up, I'm going to be 59 this year, and I look at mistakes. As a parent, you don't get the rule book. The kids don't come. You don't know what you're going to get. You try to set the bar. I think nowadays, looking back when I was younger and with some of the older kids and looking down, you see my relationship with Mimo. He's close to me, because I've always done martial arts and, boxing with Mimo and everything. When you set the bar for your kids, I think that's what sets them up. And what concerns me with society now is because, it's harder as younger fathers. They're struggling to make ends meet, to provide, economies up and down. And then you have the internet, the social media, and then you see what's all over television. And, you know, when I was growing up, you were taught to be men. You know, when you look at, you know, my grandfather, he served in World War II. He was, you know, they were 18 years old being dropped on the beach. You know, it was the man's man. And you know, and I'm not judging all fathers, and I'm not telling anybody I'm not the perfect dad. And, you know, we all make mistakes. But whether you're a father, and even coaches and officials, you know, when I'm talking to the coaches or I'm talking to the officials, if you ever see me ringside and I hear a coach cussing out a kid in the ring, hey, we have to set the bar. You know, and a lot of the fathers out there, you might have the kids, but there's kids, you know, like you were sharing. And, you know, I know your dad, and you lost him, you know, years ago. And you could be that role model for that kid that's looking for that dad, that doesn't have a father in his life, you know, whether it's certain circumstances, you know, dealing with you know, what we see, and especially in the USA boxing, dealing with a lot of kids. A lot of these kids have lost their fathers, they have broken homes, some sad stories, and they're looking. So when you're doing that, what you do as a coach or you do as an official, and you're working with these kids, you know, I remember a young man came to me that you know, we did have some kids fight at the Masters. And he, you know, and I had to stop everything. And he asked me for a picture because it was his first fight. And it made, just because I was helping him at weigh-ins, he came up to me, he said, "Can I get my picture with you?" I said, you know, "Yeah, sure." And he just wanted that picture. And he goes, "Thank you for believing in me and giving me that word of encouragement." You know, what we do as adults, and especially as men, we can make or break a kid. We might not be their father, but we have to set that bar. And, you know, I see it more and more now that I have, you know, especially on the official side, because I'm seeing what coaches are doing. I see what kids are, how they're acting and dealing with the young men, and even with our Irving Police Athletic League. And I believe you're going to get to speak to Harvey, who started that 37 years ago. And it started out with street gangs. What's it going to take for you guys? They started a boxing program. I think Coach Solis kind of gave you a little bit of background. And that's what it's all about. We dads now get involved in the communities, get involved. Make sure you know what your son and daughter is doing. You know, we see a lot in the Irving Police Athletic League now where the kids are coming in, they start out with the athletic program, and if they want to box, and the dads are starting to hang out and kind of work out, you know, hit the bags a little bit. They're not necessarily going to be boxing, but they're spending quality time with the kids, and the kids are not sitting there on the phone.
Yeah.
And I think that's what sets the bar. Just like, you know, I mean, you know my history and how I came up. You know a lot. I'm not going to get into that. You know, I don't want anybody thinking, you know, for me. But I always knew I never wanted my kids to have to grow up like that, you know, and I made a lot of bad choices, a bad decision with trying to learn it. Because, you know, unfortunately, I didn't have really a dad growing up. And, you know, I had to figure a lot of things out. But the one thing that I always knew that I wanted to be is more of a better role model. Like, this isn't a life for you.
Yeah.
That out there in the world is not a life for you. And like you see a lot of these kids, what touches me the most is making the difference. Like when you see Coach Solis, how devoted and dedicated he has been with these kids for so many years. You know, I remember one day I was talking to him and I was like, you know, there was a thing I don't want to mention too much, but I watched the father was kind of not right. And I said, you know, I asked him, I said, Solis, you know, why are you, he said, "I'm not doing it for him. I'm doing it for his kids so they have a chance."
Yeah.
I said, you know, that makes sense. I'm doing it for them kids.
Yeah, that's powerful.
And, you know, that's when you got to admit as a man, like, you might question something. It's like, you know, that makes sense. Now I understand why he was working so hard. And it was very impressive. And you see a lot of that. and when you see some older athletes that used to be pro boxers or pro fighters, and now they're giving back to the kids. I had no respect for Jake Paul as a boxer. I had none. Like, you're a glorified thing. But now I see how involved he is with helping kids. And he's, he's now going, became a Christian, from what I understand. I don't know that full. I don't want to, speculate, but that's what I heard. But he's doing so much for the kids, and for what I understand, he's even helping working with USA Boxing. I think we did share that he's done that. That sets the bar because we have to be role models for these kids.
Yeah, I think you said you don't get rule books. I mean, we don't get rule books as people, adults, men, women, and I think it's you're talking about that, and it's almost like it's lost. In the old societies, men had a certain set of rules and stigmas, and whether or not it was good or bad, I think still to this day, and studies show this, that we're not trying to be sexist, but the importance of a male role model is just paramount to a child's development. And like you said, we're a man 24/7, so I think that's a great point. Is guys, act as if that was a sales technique. Act as if you're on stage. Act as if everyone's looking at you. Act as if every little kid. I mean, it's very powerful what you said. Every little input that a child sees, like somebody, it was actually on a Christian group on Facebook. It said, "Is it okay if my 3-year-old watches UFC with me?" And I commented, "I've watched UFC for 20 years. I have a daughter. I've done jiu-jitsu. I don't think it's okay." I think that a 3-year-old, in their world, adults are nurturers. Adults are there to help them and protect them and be nice to them. And they've never seen an adult attack someone else. And, in my perspective, different, everybody's different. I was like, it made me wonder. And it made me wonder, how would my daughter, being that everyone that she knows at one loves her and takes care of her and is nice to her and no one is a threat, how she would see if two, adults that she's never seen, and so I'm like, I don't think they understand that. And I think even little inputs like that could potentially, now, and on the other aspect of it, maybe that makes somebody more tough. I don't know.
On my part of it, I mean, even with the older ones, I always started teaching them at 3-4 years old.
Oh yeah, she's gonna know jiu-jitsu at 3 and start learning.
The education part of it to me is key.
Yeah.
And understanding bullies and how to walk away. When they're younger, I always pushed, you're learning this not to be a bully. You're not learning this to go out and pick a fight. You're also learning this that you can walk away if you can.
Yeah.
Because that's the one thing, when I growing up in the style that we always encouraged the kids when we were teaching them. And some of the things that were taught, was deadly, being very brutal as they advanced in their belt levels. But the one thing I said, but the confidence that you're building is if somebody's shooting their mouth off, don't take it personal. And like I always tell the kids, if you see a bully, I want you to defend the kid that's being bullied, but also you don't know what they're going through.
Yeah.
You don't know, all my kids know, me since you were young, how I felt about bullies when you were little.
Hurt people.
Yeah. And I said, you don't know what they're going through and what they deal with and what their home life might be. Now, don't get me wrong. There's some bullies, they're just spoiled brats. Sorry to say it. Most of them, they're struggling. I remember you know, the one place we lived when we moved to Texas, and there was two kids that Jadeo and Anna had friended up with, and they were always brought to the house. Parents were always traveling for business, and you know, you thought they had the best of the world. And you know what they said? Because you know how all teenagers like, oh, my parents are, you know, always in my business and all that. And they said, well, at least your parents know what you're doing. We wish we had our parents talking to us. We don't see them half the time. We're being raised by nannies, and
That's sad.
you know, and that's kind of where it stems from. But you know, I know we're getting ready to close out here, but you know, I want to wish everybody happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day.
And happy Father's Day. And, you know, not to, you know, we're still excited about everything that's going on. I think, you know, just touching on that and the passion, you know, look at what your kids are doing. Look at society is offering right now.
All the time.
When you sit there and you see everything, you know, not everybody's going to be a tough guy or a tough woman and all that. And, you know, I don't think parents should try to make their kid a boxer or try to make them a fighter. They either have it or not. You know me, Mo, my youngest, 12 years old. He could take a hit. I didn't put it in him. I didn't make him do it. He wants to do that. Is it always easy to watch your kid get punched? No. But, you know, that's what he chose to do. But he trains hard. He works hard. You've seen his training. You've seen his muscles. He's 12 years old and
he hits hard.
He hits hard. He's solid. You know, is he the best boxer out there right now? No. He has to train every day and he keeps growing. But we push him at his pace. I don't want him out in every tournament. I don't want to put these expectations. You got to be the winner. You got to bring me home. You know, you better get in there and hurt that kid. I said, the best thing I want to see, because he said, Dad, are you proud of me? I said, you know what makes me proud? When you win, you're congratulating, you encourage that other kid. And then when you lose, you still congratulate that other, you know.
Yeah.
You really, what your heart is what makes me proud. Not because you won or lost. I don't want you going in there just because you want to hurt somebody. I want you to go in there because it's a sport and have a heart. Be strong, you know, and push forward. You know, and it's nothing wrong with being a sportsman.
Yeah.
And setting the bar. And he'll even tell you, you know, what's out there now. You know, it's, you know, we gotta raise especially our boys, you know, because one day they're going to have a famine. And when you look at society now, it's about feelings and emotions. Yeah, it's all right to have that. But let's also teach them how to be leaders. And that goes for the women too, but that falls, you know, that also falls on the father.
Yeah.
You got to set the bar for your daughter.
There's got to be a balance. You know, when the pendulum swings one way or the other, it's going to swing back the other way.
And
but have the balance.
You know, that's why I do encourage, get your kids off the phone, get your kids off the video games.
It's a mind virus.
Get them involved in sports.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if they're out there competing, or you know they're doing gymnastics, or they're they're doing track or whatever, but it gives them a commitment and gets them ready.
Yeah.
And I believe when kids are committed to something and they're involved in positive things, they got positive adults around, you know, the fathers, because we're talking about the fathers this weekend, but always, you know, they praise the mothers, is setting the bar for your kids.
Yeah.
And especially if you're there. Not necessarily doing what they're doing, because when they're in the ring, you can't be in there with them. And I don't even go in Nemo's corner because I'm too much of a distraction. So the other coaches. So,
That's
but
awesome.
I just want to wish everybody
Happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day. Great events coming up. A lot of things happen. We have a lot of big announcements coming in.
I wish we could share them.
I cannot share with you, but I'll tell you what, the DFW area is booming.
Yeah.
And we're really going to become a strong hub. We got some great announcements on the boxing side. We got some great announcements coming up on the MMA side. I'm really excited about that. You all need to come out and see our tournaments. July 25th, and then HV Promotions is going to have the one the day after, the same location. July 26th. I don't think we don't have the fights listed yet right now, but it's going to be 2 nights of great boxing, and the barbecue at Southern Junction's phenomenal. Did you?
Yeah.
You got the you got
the pulled pork was great.
it was really
Brisket, I had the brisket.
Yeah, I've had everything.
Yeah. Again, thank you to Tony.
Well, I you
and
know
the crew.
I was on the go. They know I'm busy. They said, hey, what do you want this time? I wanted the brisket street tacos. They were street tacos, but they were like burritos when
Yeah.
they came out because they filled it
Yeah.
up so
They're
much. Nicest people you could ever meet. A great venue. I already know the Masters are hoping we do another group there.
Yeah.
They're really opening and welcoming. They want the boxing, the MMA there. So you're going to see a lot more.
They have a youth MMA event coming up. So.
Yeah, that's coming up.
Yeah, check out their websites. Again, Southern Junction in Irving. Check out our Facebook, Instagram. We'll post more information. And happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day. We'll see you in the next episode. We won 45 minutes. That's okay. Let me go check.